20 Black lesbians who died of HIV. Hollywood then and now. What if history erased the bravest Black voices simply because they loved differently? Behind the marches, the music, the literature, and the culture-shifting moments, there are stories the mainstream was never comfortable telling. These are not side notes, these are foundations. From revolutionaries pushed into the shadows to artists whose truth was too powerful for their time, their courage reshaped the world you live in today. The question is, why were their stories silenced for so long? Stay with us as we uncover the truths history tried to bury. Comment your thoughts below and subscribe to Black Excellence Legends for stories that refuse to disappear. Barbara Jordan. Barbara Jordan was not just a politician. She was a moral force who reshaped American democracy at a time when the nation was fractured by distrust, racism, and political scandal. Born in Texas in 1936, Jordan rose from humble beginnings to become the first Black woman from the American South elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, a historic achievement that permanently changed the face of U.S. politics. Her ascent was not powered by spectacle or controversy, but by intellect, discipline, and an unshakable belief in constitutional justice. Jordan's voice became nationally recognized during the 1974 Watergate hearings, where her televised speech on the Constitution drew an estimated over 30 million viewers. With calm authority, she reminded the country that no individual, not even the president, stood above the law. That moment cemented her reputation as one of the most respected political figures of the 20th century, admired across party lines for her clarity, precision, and moral courage. Behind the public image, Barbara Jordan lived a deeply private life. She never publicly labeled her sexual identity, yet she shared a long-term, committed partnership of over 2 decades with Nancy Earle, an educational psychologist. At a time when being openly queer could end a political career, Jordan chose discretion, not out of shame, but as a survival strategy in an era hostile to difference. Importantly, there is no credible evidence that Barbara Jordan died from HIV/AIDS. She passed away in 1996 due to complications related to leukemia, after years of also living with multiple sclerosis, which eventually required her to use a wheelchair. Even as her health declined, Jordan continued teaching ethics and public policy, proving that leadership does not end when the spotlight fades. Her legacy is not defined by labels, rumors, or speculation, but by impact. Barbara Jordan showed that representation does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it enters history through dignity, restraint, and an unwavering commitment to principle. In a world hungry for heroes, Barbara Jordan remains a reminder that true power lies not in visibility alone, but in integrity that endures long after the microphone is turned off. Lorraine Hansberry. Lorraine Hansberry was a revolutionary voice whose brilliance reshaped American theater and forced the nation to confront truths it often tried to ignore. Born in Chicago in 1930, she became the first Black woman to have a play produced on Broadway, an achievement that permanently altered the cultural landscape. Her groundbreaking work, A Raisin in the Sun, premiered in 1959 and ran for 530 performances, a rare success that placed Black family life, racial injustice, and economic struggle at the center of American storytelling. Hansberry's writing was never confined to entertainment. It was activism in literary form. Inspired by her own family's battle against housing segregation, a case that reached the U.S. Supreme Court, she infused her work with sharp critiques of racism, inequality, and systemic oppression. Her words gave voice to millions who had long been excluded from mainstream narratives, and her influence extended far beyond the stage into political and intellectual circles. Less publicly known during her lifetime was Hansberry's connection to the LGBTQ+ community. While she never openly identified as queer in public, she explored themes of same-sex attraction, gender roles, and identity in private writings and essays, published under pseudonyms in LGBTQ+ journals. These writings revealed an inner world grappling with authenticity in an era when openness could mean professional and personal destruction. This quiet courage adds depth, not controversy, to her legacy. Lorraine Hansberry did not die of HIV/AIDS. She passed away in 1965 at just 34 years old due to pancreatic cancer, cutting short a life of extraordinary promise. Yet in that brief time, she reshaped American literature, influenced civil rights discourse, and inspired generations of artists, activists, and thinkers. Hansberry's legacy is not defined by how she died, but by how boldly she lived, writing truth into existence when the world was not yet ready to hear it. Her work remains a testament to the power of storytelling as resistance, and her voice continues to echo wherever justice is demanded. Audre Lorde. Audre Lorde was not simply a poet, she was a force of language, a warrior of truth, and a fearless architect of liberation. Born in New York City in 1934 to Caribbean immigrant parents, Lorde used words as weapons against racism, sexism, homophobia, and silence. She openly identified as a Black lesbian feminist at a time when doing so invited exclusion, danger, and erasure. Lorde's work dismantled the idea that identity must be fragmented. She insisted that race, gender, sexuality, and class were inseparable, long before intersectionality became a widely used term. Her essays and poetry collections, including Sister Outsider and The Black Unicorn, became foundational texts for feminist and LGBTQ+ movements worldwide. Her writing was raw, unapologetic, and deeply personal, turning lived experience into political power. In the late 1970s, Audre Lorde was diagnosed with breast cancer, a battle she documented with fierce honesty in the cancer journals. Rather than retreat into privacy, she transformed illness into activism, exposing racial disparities in healthcare and challenging how society treats women's bodies. Later in life, she also lived with liver cancer, continuing to write, teach, and organize even as her health declined. It is crucial to state clearly, Audre Lorde did not die of HIV/AIDS. She passed away in 1992 at the age of 58 due to complications related to cancer. However, her advocacy profoundly shaped conversations around HIV/AIDS, particularly within Black and queer communities, where stigma and neglect were devastating. Audre Lorde's enduring message, "Your silence will not protect you," remains one of the most quoted and transformative calls to action in modern history. Her legacy is not one of tragedy, but of defiance, love, and truth spoken without apology. She did not ask permission to exist. She demanded the world make room. Prudence Nobantu Mabele. Prudence Nobantu Mabele was a pioneer whose courage permanently changed the conversation around HIV/AIDS in South Africa and across the African continent. Born in 1971, she emerged during one of the most dangerous periods to speak openly about HIV, when stigma, fear, and misinformation dominated public life. In 1992, Prudence became the first Black South African woman to publicly disclose her HIV-positive status, a groundbreaking and life-threatening act at the time. Her announcement was not a plea for sympathy, but a declaration of dignity. In a society where HIV was often associated with shame, immorality, and silence, particularly for women and LGBTQ+ individuals, Prudence refused to hide. She transformed personal vulnerability into public resistance, opening doors for honest dialogue when silence was costing lives. As an openly lesbian activist, Prudence faced layered discrimination based on gender, sexuality, and health status. Instead of retreating, she organized. She co-founded the Positive Women's Network, creating safe spaces for women living with HIV to access education, medical advocacy, and emotional support. Her work emphasized autonomy, reproductive rights, and informed healthcare, issues often denied to women living with HIV. Prudence became an international advocate, working with global health organizations and addressing conferences worldwide. She challenged governments, medical systems, and communities to confront the human cost of stigma. Her message was clear. HIV was not a moral failure, and those living with it deserve respect, care, and a future. Importantly, Prudence Nobantu Mabele did not die of HIV/AIDS. She passed away in 2017 at the age of 45 due to complications from pneumonia. By the time of her death, she had lived more than 25 years openly HIV positive, disproving the fatalism that once surrounded the diagnosis. Her legacy endures not only in policy changes and organizations she helped build, but in the countless lives she empowered to live without shame. Prudence Mabele did not just survive. She redefined survival as leadership, truth, and unapologetic visibility. Gugu Dlamini. Gugu Dlamini's name is etched into history as a symbol of courage, tragedy, and the brutal cost of stigma. In 1998, during South Africa's escalating HIV/AIDS crisis, Gugu made a decision that would change the nation's conscience. She publicly disclosed her HIV-positive status during an awareness campaign, hoping to educate her community and encourage compassion rather than fear. At the time, misinformation about HIV was widespread, especially in rural and working-class communities. As a Black woman living openly with HIV, Gugu faced immediate hostility. Instead of receiving support, she became a target of suspicion, ridicule, and violence, not from strangers, but from people within her own community. Tragically, only weeks after going public, Gugu Dlamini was murdered, beaten to death outside her home. Her death was not accidental, nor symbolic. It was a direct act of violence fueled by stigma, fear, and ignorance surrounding HIV/AIDS. She was not a celebrity in the traditional sense, but her bravery made her a national figure whose story could not be ignored. Gugu's murder shocked South Africa and drew international attention. It forced governments, activists, and media outlets to confront the deadly consequences of silence and misinformation. Her death became a turning point in HIV/AIDS advocacy, exposing how stigma can be just as lethal as the virus itself. Although Gugu Dlamini did not die from AIDS-related illness, her life is inseparable from the HIV/AIDS crisis because she paid the ultimate price for honesty. Her courage inspired reforms in public health messaging and intensified efforts to protect those living openly with HIV. Today, Gugu Dlamini is remembered as a martyr for truth. Her legacy stands as a warning and a call to action. When society punishes honesty, violence thrives. Her story reminds the world that awareness without protection is not enough, and that dignity should never cost a life. Marsha P. Johnson. Marsha P. Johnson was not just a historical figure. She was a living act of resistance, joy, and radical compassion. Born in 1945 in New Jersey, Marsha identified as a Black transgender woman and became one of the most visible and fearless voices of the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement. Her presence was magnetic, her activism relentless, and her belief in collective liberation unwavering. Marsha rose to prominence following the 1969 Stonewall Uprising, a pivotal moment that ignited the global fight for LGBTQ+ equality. While history often sanitizes Stonewall, Marsha stood at its raw center, confronting police brutality, demanding dignity, and refusing silence. She later became a familiar figure in New York City, known for her vibrant style, generosity, and deep care for the most marginalized. Alongside her close friend Sylvia Rivera, Marsha co-founded STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, an organization dedicated to supporting homeless transgender youth, drag queens, and queer people rejected by society. STAR was not symbolic activism. It provided food, shelter, and protection when no one else would. Marsha gave everything she had, often prioritizing others' survival over her own. Marsha was also a visible advocate during the early years of the HIV/AIDS crisis, when stigma and government neglect devastated queer communities. She participated in ACTUP demonstrations and worked tirelessly to raise awareness, despite facing poverty, mental health struggles, and discrimination. It is important to be precise. Marsha P. Johnson did not have a confirmed cause of death related to HIV/AIDS. She died in 1992 at the age of 46, when her body was found in the Hudson River. Initially ruled a suicide, her death has since been widely questioned, with many believing she was a victim of violence. The case was reopened decades later, though no definitive conclusion has been reached. Marsha's legacy is not defined by how she died, but by how fiercely she lived. She proved that activism can be rooted in love, that visibility is revolutionary, and that liberation must include the most vulnerable, or it means nothing at all. Sylvia Rivera. Sylvia Rivera was a revolutionary voice too often pushed to the margins, even within movements she helped build. Born in 1951 in New York City, Sylvia was a Latina transgender activist whose life was shaped by poverty, survival, and an unshakable demand for justice. She understood early that liberation would not come easily and that some would be deliberately left behind. Like Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia was a central figure in the Stonewall Uprising, fighting back against police harassment that targeted transgender people, sex workers, and queer youth. Yet as LGBTQ+ organizations gained mainstream visibility, Sylvia watched as transgender voices were deliberately excluded in favor of respectability politics. Refusing erasure, Sylvia co-founded STAR with Marsha, creating one of the first organizations dedicated specifically to transgender and gender non-conforming youth. STAR operated with almost no resources, yet it saved lives by offering shelter, food, and a sense of belonging to those abandoned by family and society. Sylvia's activism was not always welcomed. She was frequently silenced at pride events and pushed aside by gay rights leaders who believed transgender issues were too controversial. Still, She Peaches were fiery, unapologetic, and raw, demanding recognition for those left to die in the streets. In later years, Sylvia became deeply involved in activism surrounding HIV/AIDS, homelessness, and transgender rights. Though she was often portrayed as combative, her anger was rooted in grief for friends lost, promises broken, and communities betrayed. Sylvia Rivera did not die of HIV/AIDS. She passed away in 2002 at the age of 50 due to complications from liver cancer. By the time of her death, she had helped reshape the conversation around transgender inclusion, even if recognition came late. Today, Sylvia Rivera is remembered as a truth teller who refused comfort over justice. Her legacy challenges history itself, reminding us that movements are only as strong as those they refuse to abandon. Octavia E. Butler. Octavia Estelle Butler changed literature by daring to imagine futures where Black women were not erased, but central. Born in 1947 in Pasadena, California, Octavia grew up painfully shy, dyslexic, and often isolated. Yet from that solitude emerged one of the most visionary minds in American fiction. In a genre historically dominated by white male voices, Octavia became the first Black woman to achieve mainstream success in science fiction. Her work blended speculative worlds with unflinching examinations of power, race, gender, survival, and human adaptability. She didn't write escapism, she wrote warnings. Her novel, Kindred, remains one of the most studied works in American literature, using time travel to confront the brutal realities of slavery. Later works like Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents eerily predicted societal collapse, climate catastrophe, and authoritarian politics decades before they dominated public discourse. Many scholars now describe her writing as prophetic rather than fictional. While Octavia Butler never publicly labeled her sexual orientation, her work resonated deeply within queer communities. Her stories consistently challenged rigid gender roles, explored fluid identity, and rejected traditional power hierarchies. She wrote characters who existed beyond binaries, social, sexual, and moral, making her a literary touchstone for LGBTQ+ readers seeking reflection rather than permission. Octavia lived privately, choosing discipline over celebrity. She wrote daily, methodically, believing that imagination was not magic, but labor. Her influence extended beyond awards, though she earned many, including multiple Hugo and Nebula Awards and a MacArthur Genius Grant in 1995. Octavia E. Butler did not die of HIV/AIDS. She passed away in 2006 at the age of 58 following a stroke. Her death left an immeasurable void, but her work remains urgently alive. Octavia Butler didn't just imagine the future, she warned us to prepare for it. Dee Shambblei. Dee Shambblei was a fearless advocate whose life embodied resistance, visibility, and survival at the intersection of race, gender identity, and public health. Based in Atlanta, Dee emerged as a powerful voice for Black transgender women living with HIV at a time when silence, stigma, and violence defined daily reality for many in her community. As an openly transgender woman, Dee refused invisibility. She worked tirelessly as an activist, educator, and community organizer, focusing on HIV prevention, access to healthcare, and dignity for trans women of color, one of the most marginalized groups in America. Her advocacy was not theoretical, it was lived. Dee spoke from experience, understanding firsthand how systemic neglect, discrimination, and poverty intensify the HIV crisis within Black trans communities. Dee was deeply involved with grassroots organizations, using her voice to confront medical bias and demand culturally competent care. She challenged institutions that treated trans women as statistics instead of human beings. In public forums and private support spaces, she reminded others that survival itself was a form of resistance. Importantly, Dee Shambllei did not die of AIDS. While she was open about living with HIV and advocating for those affected by it, she passed away in 2013 due to heart-related complications. Misinformation has often blurred the truth about her death, but accuracy matters, especially when honoring lives that were already misrepresented in mainstream narratives. Dee's legacy is not defined by illness but by impact. She helped shift conversations around HIV from shame to empowerment, particularly for transgender women who were often excluded even within LGBTQ+ spaces. Her work laid groundwork that continues to influence public health advocacy today. In a society that repeatedly attempted to erase her, Dee Shambllei chose to speak louder, stand firmer, and love her community harder. Her life reminds us that activism does not always make headlines, but it saves lives. Joseph Beam. Joseph Beam was a literary architect of Black gay consciousness at the height of the HIV/AIDS crisis, a time when silence equaled death and representation was a radical act. Born in 1954, Beam emerged as a writer, editor, and cultural organizer determined to document Black gay life with honesty, dignity, and urgency. His most influential contribution came in 1986 with the publication of In the Life, a Black gay anthology. At a time when Black gay men were nearly invisible in both mainstream LGBTQ+ literature and Black cultural spaces, the anthology became a revolutionary declaration. We exist, we matter, and our stories deserve permanence. Beam curated essays, poems, and narratives that explored love, fear, spirituality, racism, desire, and survival without apology. Joseph Beam understood that HIV/AIDS was not only a medical crisis, but a cultural one. Entire communities were being erased before their stories could be told. His work was an act of preservation against that erasure. He once wrote that Black gay men were dying in silence, and his mission was to break it. Beyond literature, Beam was a community builder. He organized readings, discussions, and safe spaces where Black gay men could speak openly during a period defined by stigma and loss. His leadership helped foster connection when isolation was deadly. Joseph Beam died in 1988 from complications related to AIDS at the age of 33. His death came far too early, but not before he permanently altered the landscape of Black LGBTQ+ literature. In his memory, fellow writers later published Brother to Brother, ensuring that his vision continued beyond his lifetime. Joseph Beam did not seek fame. He sought truth. And through his words, he gave Black gay men something rare at the time: visibility, validation, and a voice that refused to disappear. Melvin Dixon. Melvin Dixon was a literary voice of rare honesty, whose work captured the emotional complexity of being Black, gay, and alive during one of the most devastating periods in modern history. Born in 1950, Dixon emerged as a poet, novelist, critic, and professor at a time when Black gay men were systematically excluded from both mainstream literature and academic spaces. Rather than conform, he wrote directly from lived experience. Dixon's writing explored intimacy, masculinity, faith, desire, and vulnerability with a level of emotional precision that was both tender and unflinching. His novels Trouble the Water and Vanishing Rooms examine the intersections of race, sexuality, and spirituality, presenting Black gay men as fully human, capable of love, fear, devotion, and doubt. At a time when representation was often reduced to stereotypes or silence, Dixon insisted on nuance. Beyond fiction, Melvin Dixon was a respected literary critic and educator. As a professor, he mentored students who would later shape Black and queer literary studies, emphasizing that storytelling was not merely artistic, but political. He believed literature could heal, preserve memory, and challenge systems that thrived on erasure. Dixon was also deeply affected by the HIV/AIDS crisis, which devastated the Black gay community throughout the 1980s and early 1990s. His later works reflected the grief, anger, and urgency of a generation watching friends and lovers disappear while society largely looked away. He did not sensationalize suffering, he documented it with dignity. Melvin Dixon died in 1992 at the age of 42 from complications related to AIDS. His passing marked the loss of a powerful intellect and a compassionate chronicler of Black queer life. Yet his legacy endures in classrooms, libraries, and the voices of writers who followed his path. Dixon reminds us that literature can be an act of survival, and that telling the truth, even quietly, can change history. Rudy Lewis. Rudy Lewis was a voice that helped define an era, even as his own life remained overshadowed by silence and mystery. Born in 1936, Lewis rose to prominence as a lead singer of the Drifters, one of the most influential vocal groups in American music history. His smooth yet emotionally charged delivery became central to timeless hits such as Some Kind of Wonderful, Up on the Roof, and On Broadway. Lewis joined the Drifters in the early 1960s during a period of intense musical evolution. His voice carried both vulnerability and strength, helping the group transition into a more refined, emotionally resonant sound that influenced generations of soul and R&B artists. Despite his success, Lewis lived under immense pressure, both professionally and personally. At a time when the music industry demanded conformity, Rudy Lewis is widely believed to have been a closeted gay man, navigating fame in an era hostile to openness. While he never publicly discussed his sexuality, those close to the group later described the isolation and emotional strain that accompanied his life behind the scenes. Representation was non-existent, and silence was often the price of survival. Tragically, Rudy Lewis's life ended abruptly. He died in 1964 at the age of 27, just one day before the Drifters were scheduled to record Under the Boardwalk. The official cause of death was a drug overdose, though circumstances surrounding his passing have remained unclear. Importantly, his death was not related to HIV/AIDS, which had not yet emerged publicly at the time. Though his career was brief, Rudy Lewis left an indelible mark on American music. His voice still echoes through radio waves, film soundtracks, and cultural memory. He represents countless artists whose brilliance shone despite living in a world that would not allow them to be fully seen. Rudy Lewis reminds us that behind every classic song is a human story, often unheard, but never erased.
Gladys Bentley.
Gladys Bentley was decades ahead of her time, a fearless performer who challenged race, gender, and sexuality norms long before the world was ready to listen. Born in 1907 in Philadelphia, Bentley rose to fame during the Harlem Renaissance, an era when Black art flourished despite intense social restrictions. She became one of the most recognizable entertainers in Harlem, not just for her musical talent, but for her unapologetic self-expression. Bentley was a blues singer, pianist, and stage performer, best known for her commanding presence at Harlem's Clam House and the Ubangi Club. Dressed in tailored men's suits and top hats, she openly flirted with women on stage, sang bawdy and satirical lyrics, and rejected traditional femininity at a time when such defiance could end careers or lives. She did not perform gender ambiguity subtly, she owned it. In an era when homosexuality was criminalized and heavily stigmatized, Gladys Bentley lived openly as a lesbian. Her performances were acts of resistance, turning the stage into a space of liberation for those who rarely saw themselves reflected. Audiences, black, white, queer, and straight, were drawn to her charisma and honesty. However, the cultural climate shifted. By the late 1940s and 1950s, increased conservatism and McCarthy-era moral policing pushed Bentley out of the spotlight. Facing pressure to conform, she later claimed to have undergone hormone treatment and publicly distanced herself from her earlier identity. Statements many historians interpret as survival tactics rather than genuine transformation. Gladys Bentley died in 1960 at the age of 52, reportedly from pneumonia complications. She did not die from HIV/AIDS, which had not yet emerged. For decades, her contributions were minimized, but modern scholars and artists have reclaimed her as a pioneering queer icon. Bentley's life stands as proof that visibility itself can be revolutionary. She lived boldly when silence was safer, and that courage still resonates today. Venus Xtravaganza. Venus Xtravaganza was more than a rising star in New York's ballroom scene. She was a symbol of beauty, aspiration, and the brutal realities faced by transgender women of color. Born in 1965, Venus came of age in a society that offered little protection or understanding for trans individuals, especially those who were poor, Black or Latina, and queer. Venus gained international recognition through the groundbreaking 1990 documentary Paris is Burning, which chronicled the underground ballroom culture of New York City. Within the film, Venus stood out for her softness, vulnerability, and honesty. She spoke openly about her dreams of love, safety, and success. Simple desires made dangerous by the world she lived in. As a transgender woman, Venus faced constant threats, homelessness, discrimination, and violence. Like many trans women at the time, she survived through chosen family within the ballroom community, where houses provided structure, identity, and protection. Venus belonged to the house of Xtravaganza, one of the most respected houses in ballroom history. What made Venus unforgettable was her openness. She talked candidly about navigating relationships, about wanting a life free from fear, and about the risks she took simply by existing authentically. Her words in the documentary now feel haunting as they foreshadowed the dangers that ultimately claimed her life. In 1988, Venus Xtravaganza was murdered at the age of 23. Her body was found in a New York hotel room. The case was never solved. Importantly, Venus did not die from HIV/AIDS. Her death was the result of violence, highlighting the extreme vulnerability faced by transgender women of color. Venus's life and death exposed harsh truths society preferred to ignore. Today, she is remembered not only as a ballroom icon, but as a reminder that visibility without protection can be deadly. Her legacy continues to fuel conversations about trans safety, dignity, and the right to exist without fear. Lynn Harris. Lynn Harris was a literary trailblazer who reshaped Black popular fiction by telling stories many publishers once considered too risky to touch. Born in 1955 in Flint, Michigan, Harris grew up navigating the expectations placed on Black masculinity, success, and silence. Before becoming an author, he worked as a salesman for IBM, a career that looked stable on the surface, but felt deeply disconnected from his true calling. Harris's breakthrough came in 1991 with his debut novel, Invisible Life, a story centered on a successful Black man living a double life as a closeted gay man. After being rejected by major publishers, Harris self-published the book by selling copies from the trunk of his car. What followed was unprecedented. The novel became a word-of-mouth phenomenon, eventually selling over 1 million copies and forcing the publishing industry to pay attention. Through novels like Just As I Am, If This World Were Mine, and Any Way the Wind Blows, Harris explored love, secrecy, faith, shame, and self-acceptance within Black communities. His writing was accessible, emotional, and unflinching. He gave voice to Black gay men who rarely saw themselves reflected in mainstream literature, not as side characters, but as complex human beings. Although Harris was open about being gay in his professional life, he remained protective of his private world. What mattered most to him was the work. He believed stories could save lives by helping readers feel less alone. Thousands of fans credited his books with helping them come out, reconcile faith and identity, or simply feel seen. Lynn Harris died in 2009 at the age of 54, following complications related to heart disease. He did not die from HIV/AIDS, despite persistent public misconceptions. His legacy endures as a cornerstone of Black LGBTQ+ literature. Harris proved that honesty sells, representation matters, and storytelling can quietly change culture from the inside out. Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin was one of the most influential architects of the American Civil Rights Movement, yet for decades, his name was intentionally pushed into the background. Born in 1912 in Pennsylvania, Rustin was raised by Quaker grandparents who instilled in him a deep commitment to nonviolence, justice, and equality. These values would define his life's work. Rustin was a brilliant strategist, organizer, and intellectual force. He played a central role in introducing nonviolent resistance to the civil rights movement, drawing inspiration from Mahatma Gandhi. Most notably, he was the chief organizer of the 1963 March on Washington, the event where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his historic "I Have a Dream" speech. Without Rustin's logistical genius, the march would not have succeeded. Despite his contributions, Rustin was often sidelined because he was openly gay at a time when homosexuality was weaponized to discredit political movements. Some leaders feared his sexuality would be used to undermine civil rights efforts. Rustin accepted this marginalization quietly, believing the cause was larger than his personal recognition. Beyond civil rights, Rustin was also a tireless advocate for labor rights, anti-war movements, and global human rights. Later in life, he spoke more openly about the need to connect racial justice with LGBTQ+ equality, insisting that freedom was indivisible. Bayard Rustin died in 1987 at the age of 75, following complications from a ruptured appendix. He did not die from HIV/AIDS. Today, Rustin is finally receiving the recognition he long deserved. His life reminds us that true leadership does not always seek the spotlight, and that courage sometimes means continuing the work even when history refuses to say your name. Sylvester James Jr., known simply as Sylvester, was a revolutionary force in music whose voice, presence, and courage permanently reshaped disco, dance, and LGBTQ+ visibility in popular culture. Born in 1947 in Los Angeles, Sylvester grew up in a deeply religious household where his expressive nature and feminine mannerisms often clashed with rigid expectations. From an early age, he understood what it meant to be different, and he refused to apologize for it. Sylvester rose to prominence in the late 1960s as part of the avant-garde performance group, the Cockettes, where flamboyance, gender fluidity, and radical self-expression were celebrated rather than hidden. By the mid-1970s, he launched a solo career that would define an era. His soaring falsetto and emotional delivery set him apart in a music industry dominated by hyper-masculine norms. His 1978 hit, "You Make Me Feel Mighty Real," became a global anthem of liberation, joy, and self-acceptance. The song topped dance charts and remains one of the most influential tracks in disco history. Unlike many artists of his time, Sylvester did not hide his identity. He performed openly in makeup, sequins, and traditionally feminine clothing, challenging audiences to confront their assumptions about gender and sexuality. At the height of his fame, Sylvester used his platform to uplift others, especially Black queer artists and women. He was outspoken about equality in an industry that often exploited but erased LGBTQ+ contributions. As disco faced backlash in the early 1980s, Sylvester pivoted toward gospel-influenced and more introspective music, reflecting his personal and spiritual evolution. In the mid-1980s, Sylvester was diagnosed with HIV at a time when fear, stigma, and misinformation dominated public discourse. Rather than retreat, he confronted the illness with honesty and grace. He openly acknowledged his diagnosis, raised awareness, and made a conscious decision to donate his royalties to AIDS organizations, ensuring his success would continue to help others long after he was gone. Sylvester died in 1988 at the age of 41 from complications related to AIDS. Today, his legacy endures far beyond disco. Sylvester is remembered not only for his groundbreaking music, but for his fearless authenticity. He proved that joy can be radical, that visibility can be powerful, and that living truthfully, even in the face of rejection, can change culture forever. Willie Ninja, widely revered as the godfather of voguing, was more than a dancer. He was a visionary who transformed an underground survival art into a global cultural movement. Born in 1961 in New York City, Willie grew up navigating a world that offered little safety or acceptance for Black queer youth. From that reality, he forged something extraordinary, a language of movement that expressed power, elegance, and defiance. Voguing emerged from the Black and Latinx ballroom scene, where LGBTQ+ communities, especially transgender women and gay men, created chosen families known as houses. Willie founded the House of Ninja, which quickly became legendary. His sharp lines, precise poses, and fluid grace elevated voguing into a disciplined art form inspired by fashion magazines, martial arts, and runway modeling. Willie Ninja gained international recognition through the 1990 documentary Paris is Burning, which revealed ballroom culture to the world. Unlike many performers who faded into obscurity, Willie leveraged visibility into opportunity. He worked as a choreographer, modeled for major designers, and trained models, including Naomi Campbell, on runway movement, quietly influencing mainstream fashion from behind the scenes. Beyond performance, Willie was a mentor and protector. He provided housing, guidance, and structure for young LGBTQ+ people rejected by their families. In a time when HIV/AIDS devastated the ballroom community, he emphasized discipline, self-worth, and survival, not just glamour. Willie Ninja was open about living with HIV during an era when stigma often led to silence. He continued teaching, mentoring, and performing as long as his health allowed, determined that his legacy would be one of empowerment rather than fear. Willie Ninja died in 2006 at the age of 45 due to complications related to AIDS. Today, voguing is performed on global stages, from fashion weeks to pop concerts, but its roots trace directly back to Willie Ninja's vision. He proved that movement could be resistance, style could be armor, and chosen family could save lives. His influence lives wherever ballroom culture thrives. Assotto Saint. Assotto Saint was a fearless poet, playwright, and activist whose voice cut through silence during one of the darkest chapters in modern history. Born in Haiti in 1957 and later based in the United States, Saint emerged as a powerful literary figure at the intersection of Black identity, queerness, and the HIV/AIDS crisis. Saint's work was unapologetically political and deeply personal. As a Black gay man living with HIV, he refused to soften the truth for comfort. His poetry and essays addressed grief, rage, survival, spirituality, and love, challenging both mainstream society and Black communities to confront stigma head-on. During the 1980s and early 1990s, when HIV/AIDS was widely ignored by governments and misunderstood by the public, Assotto Saint became one of the most outspoken advocates for people living with the virus. He criticized institutional neglect, racism in healthcare, and the silencing of Black queer voices within both LGBTQ+ and civil rights movements. Saint edited and contributed to groundbreaking anthologies that documented the emotional and political realities of the epidemic. His work insisted that AIDS was not just a medical issue, but a moral one, rooted in inequality, fear, and abandonment. Unlike narratives that portrayed people with HIV solely as victims, Saint centered dignity, agency, and resistance. As an artist, he believed language was a weapon. As an activist, he believed silence was deadly. He mentored younger writers and activists, encouraging them to speak boldly even when it came at personal cost. His writing was raw, lyrical, and confrontational, designed not to comfort but to awaken. Assotto Saint died in 1994 at the age of 36 from complications related to AIDS. Though his life was short, his impact was lasting. Saint's legacy remains a testament to the power of truth-telling, especially when the world would rather look away. He reminds us that visibility is survival, and that words can still fight when bodies grow tired. After hearing these stories, one question remains: were these pioneers honored too late, or are we still failing them today? Visibility brought progress, but also danger, loss, and sacrifice. Some chose silence to survive. Others spoke and paid the ultimate price. Does courage require public truth, or is survival itself an act of resistance? And who gets to decide which stories matter? This conversation doesn't end here. It starts with you. Share your perspective in the comments, challenge each other respectfully, and tell us whose legacy deserves more recognition. Subscribe to Black Excellence Legends, where history isn't rewritten, it's reclaimed.